What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Alex. Today I'm going to be talking about MaXXXine, the trilogy capper in the X trilogy, the sequel to X and Pearl. Once again, stars Mia Goth as Maxine Minx. In 1980s Hollywood, adult film star and aspiring actress Maxine Minx finally gets her big break. But as a mysterious killer stalks the starlets of Hollywood, a trail of blood threatens to reveal her sinister past. I'm a big fan of X. I thought that was one of the best horror movies of 2022. And one of the best horror movies of recent years. It had a lot to say about ageism, sexual empowerment. I really do like Pearl. I didn't like it so much on first watch because I was just like, what the hell was that? But on rewatch, it was very apparent to me that the slow burn and the slow pace was deliberate and intentional to dive into the psyche of Pearl's mind and why she goes crazy. Now we follow Maxine in the 80s trying to gain Hollywood stardom, and I enjoyed this movie for the most part, but I will say I walked out a bit disappointed in the end. I don't think it's as good as X. I'm still really conflicted even after sleeping on it as to whether or not I prefer this to Pearl. I'm going back and forth a lot, and I'm probably going to go back and forth a lot in my mind for the next few days thinking about this movie. I'm not going to say that this is a bad movie. I enjoyed about 2/3 of this movie, and then there's other aspects of this movie that I just didn't think really hit the ball for me. But let's get started with the things that I liked first, because I think that this movie still does have a lot to offer. I love the themes that this movie touches upon. In this time period, a lot of people were just like, were really religious. Like, it was like every Sunday you had to go to church. And in this time, when people thought that rock and roll was becoming something else like glam metal, you had a lot of those bands that were introducing themes that people thought were promoting Satanism. I mean, Motley Crue had a song called Shout at the Devil. I mean, I think you're kind of feeding into those claims from those people very well there, Vince Neil. And so this movie touches upon it. You can see how this movie is saying, like, these were the things that people thought were commonplace in not just music but the entertainment industry, and how they thought that these ideas invaded the things that they tried to escape from, their everyday problems, because everybody looks at the entertainment industry as just escapism. The movie does a fairly adequate job of touching upon those themes. All three of these movies really have some really great themes, and none of them are the same. I gotta give Ty West a lot of credit for that, for not being repetitive and actually coming up with different things to say. That's very hard to do throughout the course of a trilogy, and I gotta give him a lot of props for that. And I gotta give him a lot of props for homaging old school filmmaking, and from what felt like I was watching a movie that was ripped straight from the 1980s. I love that look. X had this look. Pearl had that look. I love watching movies with old grainy film stock. It's essentially what the first third of this movie is. It looks all snowy and it looks dirty. It made the aesthetic of this movie feel like I was watching something from the 1980s. I love this old-timey feel to these movies. You can tell Ty West has a love and a passion for old school filmmaking. Even the way he frames shots, the way that shots are edited, shot reverse shot isn't framed the way shot reverse shot would be framed today. Shot reverse shot in this movie feels like it is framed in a way that we haven't seen in about 40 years. I can't believe the 1980s were 40 years ago. I mean, in the 90s and 2000s, we were saying that was 10 years ago. That was 20 years ago. Now the 1980s are 40 years ago. Holy shit. But like, you don't see shots like this movie has in modern filmmaking, because I get it, filmmaking has evolved, but these shots, even shot reverse shot, I felt like were shots ripped from 1980s movies and put into this movie. I love that he pays homage to old school filmmaking. And once again, Mia Goth, despite all the controversy surrounding her with what happened on the set of this movie or another movie, I forget what it was, she is a joy to watch in this movie. She's the reason why we buy tickets to see these movies. She is the selling point. She is the factor in these movies, the X factor, no pun intended, since this is the X trilogy. She is really good as Maxine Minx. She is fearless in her desire and her drive to succeed in Hollywood, but she's also fearless in her drive to catch what is known as the Night Stalker in this movie, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. The thing is what keeps me coming back to these movies is Mia Goth, is the character of Maxine, and I really dig the character of Maxine and her drive and her passion for Hollywood stardom in this movie and the hedonistic lifestyle that she's living. The movie touches upon that, but I feel like also to its detriment, because now this is where we get in to some of my gripes with the movie or the things that I don't like. And I do think that there are going to be some conflicting thoughts here, because for something that I didn't like, there's also something that I did like pertaining to that. Like, for instance, I'm not huge on the whole third act of this movie, but I really do like that the movie threw me for a loop, because there's a reveal at the end of this movie as to who the Night Stalker actually is. And that's a big chunk of this movie, is trying to figure out who the Night Stalker is. And based on the trailer, I had my suspicions. I was like, it's this person, and if it's not this person, it's that person. And the twist doesn't reveal any of those people. And so I'll give the movie props for that. It threw me for a loop. So it wasn't predictable like I thought it was going to be. I'm really happy that the movie didn't feed into my desire to be like, oh, I know who the killer is already. The movie lost me with its congruent storylines. These two storylines, the hedonistic lifestyle and MaXXXine trying to rise to stardom in Hollywood, and the Night Stalker plotline, both of them feel like outliers. You feel like you're watching two separate movies here, and the movie can't really decide which path it wants to go down. You feel like you're watching an episodic crime thriller. You're tuning into each episode week by week. It feels like a weekly episodic TV show, because you have the character development with MaXXXine mixed with all this, and it doesn't coalesce or come together as well as the movie thinks it does. And while this movie is paced better than Pearl, in my opinion, I do think the pacing is also to its detriment, because this last third of the movie feels extremely rushed. It feels like things wrap up way too quickly. It feels like we were supposed to be spending more time with this huge reveal at the end, and instead it just feels like it just gets washed off of everybody's hands really quick. So I just wish that the movie had decided which way it wanted to go. I wish that it was more about MaXXXine's hedonistic lifestyle and her rise to stardom and how that was affecting her, and maybe could have done something with her psyche in this movie. And then you have this whole Night Stalker thing that feels like it completely derails the movie, and you feel like you're completely watching a crime thriller. And quite honestly, I wouldn't describe MaXXXine as a horror movie. I would describe it as a crime thriller. It's nowhere near as over the top as X. The blood and gore, if you're looking for that in a horror movie, it's not really here. It's every once in a while, but even then, it's not really that bloody. If you're expecting something really, really over the top, you're going to be massively disappointed here. And I think I was a little bit, because listen, this is the trilogy capper. I get it. Bigger doesn't necessarily mean better, but you're a trilogy capper. I feel like you would want to go more over the top and go even bigger than you already have, to try and cap this thing off, to make it feel like this big epic finale. It never felt like that to me. It just felt like it lost so much steam, because these two plot lines were at conflict with each other, and felt like that they belonged in two different movies, or that you were watching two different movies. It didn't feel like it was encompassing the horror genre. I felt like it was more of a crime thriller. I felt like I was watching something like Zodiac, but definitely not as disturbing. And there's not a lot of tension in the buildup to the Night Stalker's kills and all that. So I'm actually going to do something I don't really do. I like a lot of this movie, but I also am conflicted about other parts of this movie, so I'm not going to give it a rating, because I can't decide on what rating I want to give the movie. I keep going back and forth on my letterbox between 3 and 3.5 stars. I slept on it. I did the same thing this morning. My thoughts on the movie are really the same as they were last night when I walked out of the theater, so I'm very, very conflicted as to what grade I would give this movie. So if you have seen MaXXXine, let me know what you think of it in the comments section below. I'll leave my link to my website in the description below as well. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. My name is Alex Madden, and I will see you at the movies somewhere.